While Lucy was intent on reading the letter, unknown to her, her grandfather had seen a light on downstairs. Thinking he or Gran had forgotten to turn out a light, he came downstairs and found Lucy reading the letter. Realizing that she was caught in the act and couldn't hide the letter, Lucy burst into tears. Lucy, my dear child, whatever is the matter? Granddad asked. When she saw he wasn't angry, Lucy told him about everything. When I came home from school this afternoon, you didn't know I was here. I heard you and Gran talking about me and my father. I saw Gran put the letter in the drawer, and I just had to know what it said. Granddad didn't say anything, so she went on. I know it's wrong to read other people's letters, but I had to know. I've always wondered about my father, but Gran would never tell me. Yes, Granddad agreed. It is wrong to read other people's letters, but I'm glad I found you doing it. I guess we should have told you sooner. It is time you knew. There is still quite a long time to go before your father is out of prison. By that time you'll be 14 and will be allowed to choose for yourself. I don't suppose anyone could force you to live with your father against your will. If he wants to see you, he can come to visit you here. Does he want me to be part of his life? Lucy wanted to know. She had seen only the beginning of the letter. Yes, he does, was Granddad's answer. But he really wouldn't be a good guardian for you, Lucy. I am afraid he is a very bad man. What did he do that was so bad? She asked. Granddad explained from the beginning. Lucy's mother had met her father at a friend's house. After a short time, they fell in love and were soon married. Gran did not approve of the marriage, so they moved away to Spain, where he had a house. Lucy's grandparents never saw their daughter again. She died when you were born, Granddad concluded. Lucy needed to know more. What happened next? What about me? We begged him to send you home to us right away, Granddad answered. I believe he loved your mother very much and was heartbroken when she died. Keeping you made him feel as though he had a part of her. You were 3 years old when he brought you to us. Oh, you have met him? Lucy asked in amazement. Yes, he came in a taxi, carrying you in his arms, and asked us to look after you for a while. You were the image of your dear mother. We loved you immediately. But Granddad, did my father love me? Oh, yes, there was no doubt about that. You had been well cared for. He said you had had a Spanish nanny who cared for you like your own mother. He would not stay or tell us much. He placed you in Gran's arms and left. Not long after that, he wrote telling us that he had received a 10-year prison sentence and asked us to care for you. Gran said she wasn't surprised. She was sure he was a bad one from the beginning, and that we must make sure you are never told. But when he is released from jail, you will have to know. So maybe it's best you find out about him now. Granddad took a deep breath and closed his eyes. We had better both get back to bed, he said a moment later. It was a long time before Lucy could go to sleep. One day this bad man was going to come for her, and what would she do? Gran let Lucy sleep so late the next morning that she had to hurry to catch the school bus. There was no time to talk about the night before. However, after school, Gran told Lucy what she thought about children who sneaked downstairs at night and read other people's letters. But I had to know sometime, Gran. After all, he is my father, and I am 12 years old, Lucy explained. Lucy, Gran said in a trembling voice, I hope you'll never have anything to do with him. No one could take you away from us now after all these years. Lucy flung her arms around Gran's neck and hugged her. Shadow appeared and Lucy ran off with him into the woods. In the woods she sat down beside a stream to think about all that had happened in the last 24 hours. It was warm, peaceful, and quiet. Suddenly, Shadow lifted his head and growled. Lucy looked around and saw a boy limping along the bank of the stream. Hi, he greeted as he came near. Do you happen to have a handkerchief? He asked. His foot was bleeding from a deep cut. How did you do it? Lucy wondered. I stepped on some broken glass in the stream. Where do you live? Was Lucy's next question. Over in Eastbury, but I couldn't walk that far now. I might bleed to death, he said, looking at the blood seeping through the handkerchief Lucy had given him. You'd better come up to my house and let Gran bandage it, she said. It's not far. We can phone someone to come for you. It took nearly 20 minutes to reach the house, for his foot was badly hurt. My name is Donald, but you may call me Don, he informed Lucy as he hopped along on one foot. He also told her that he was 12 years old and that his father had bought the Royal Midland Hotel. Because he had been at boarding school, Don had not lived in the area very long and didn't have any friends here yet. Gran hurried across the lawn when she saw Lucy coming with the young boy. In no time she had his foot bandaged. "Granddad can ring up your father," she told him. Don and Lucy went outside and sat on the stone wall, talking until his father arrived. When he came, Don's father told Gran and Granddad how grateful he was to them. Hobbling to the car, Don called, "Cheerio, Lucy. I'll see you soon." Often in the early morning, Lucy would hear the bell of Don's old bike as he rode up to the cottage. He liked her grandparents, and they liked him. He had never known any of his own grandparents and seemed to take for granted that he could share Lucy's. Lucy and Don would go out into the woods and look for birds and other interesting things with Don's binoculars, which his dad had given him for his birthday. One time they saw a mother fox with her babies. "Dad knew I wanted binoculars," he said, "so he bought me this really good pair, Lucy." "Lucy, what happened to your dad? Did he die?" Lucy felt comfortable with Don, so she shared her story. She told him every bit she knew about the letter and all that Granddad had told her. Then she asked Don a question which had been bothering her. "What would you do, Don, if your dad were a wicked man in prison, and yet he wanted you?" Don didn't hesitate a moment before answering. "I'd find him somehow, somewhere, and I would say to him, 'I don't care what you've done, Dad, I'm still your boy.'" And through that single sentence, Lucy knew what she wanted to do. She wanted to see her father and say, "I'm still your girl." "But Don, I don't know how I could ever find him," she confided. "We'll try to think of a plan," Don said. "Maybe Mr. Smith could help us." "Who is Mr. Smith?" Lucy asked. "He's going to live at the hotel until summer. He's not very well, so I run errands for him sometimes as a part of working for my dad. You know, I'm saving up my money for a new bike," Don explained. Then he added, "He's really nice. He's a writer." "What does he write?" Lucy wanted to know. "He writes books. I've seen some of them on his bookshelf." "Writes books!" Lucy exclaimed. "Do you mean he writes real books that are printed and that people read?" "Of course. What else would you do with books?" "You wouldn't eat them," Don replied. To think that Don ran errands for a real live author whose books were printed. "I'd like to meet him someday," Lucy said. Don assured her that he thought that could be arranged. "Perhaps he'll come up to the woods with me when he's better." Lucy didn't see Don again for a while, but she didn't forget what he had said about finding a plan to meet her father. Of course, any plan would have to be kept a secret from her grandparents. She knew they'd never consent to letting her see her father in prison. It was Easter time, and Lucy attended Good Friday and Easter services at the chapel. They went to the little chapel every Sunday, but at Easter time it seemed more special. Sometimes Lucy let her mind wander and didn't pay much attention, but this time she listened carefully. She left the chapel thinking about the words of the last hymn. "He died that we might be forgiven. He died to make us good." Jesus died on the cross so that the bad things people did might be forgiven. Lucy could have thought about the bad things she had done, like deceitfully reading Gran's letter, and now she was planning in her mind to do something else that her grandparents must not know about. But Lucy did not think about the bad things she had done, for her mind was on her father. If bad people could change and be forgiven, it might make all the difference to him.